Please be seated. Good Yantif, Shana Tova. My children love to play pretend. You can ask Josephine. Nora, my younger daughter, has a stuffed fox. I brought a prop named Foxy, of course. I'll share, this isn't the actual Foxy, so don't worry. She's got Foxy in bed. This is backup Foxy that I keep in. For every parent, it's a really good thing. Get a backup just in case. Thank you to my in-laws who scoured over the internet to find backup Foxy. All right, there we go. Foxy's going to stay right there. The other day, Nora said, today is Foxy's birthday. I'll let you in a little secret. It's actually Foxy's birthday every day. So there we were, making a birthday cake out of wooden blocks for Foxy's birthday. And I took my piece and went to take a big bite. And Nora says, stop. You can't eat that. It's not real. As children and as adults, we play pretend. We make believe. And to a certain degree, we immerse ourselves in the fiction. Even though, at the end of the day, we know it's not real. We know we can't actually eat the wooden block cake, but we suspend disbelief for just a moment, and suddenly that wooden block is a piece of cake. Well, in addition to Foxy's birthday, today is the birthday of the world. On Rosh Hashanah, we recite the piyut, the medieval poem Hayom Harat Olam, which declares today is the birthday of the world. This is the day of the world's birth. This day, all creatures stand before you. Tomorrow morning, we will suspend disbelief for a moment and pretend that God did create the world 5,783 years ago, and that we stand in judgment before that omnipotent creator. Today is the birthday of the world, but it isn't really. From the sages of the Talmud to the medieval commentator Maimonides, Jews have not taken the creation story as literal history. And yet, we reread these stories every year. We recite the narratives that they might become our own. We pass them on through the generations. Philosopher Rebecca Neuberger Goldstein writes in a commentary in the New American Haggadah, stories are easily dismissible as distractions, the make-believe we craved as children. But tonight, we are asked to take this faculty of mind, so beloved by children and novelists, extremely seriously. All the adults who have outgrown story time are to be tutored tonight with the physical props meant to quicken our pretending and the ways of children to guide us. Like the Passover Seder, tonight and throughout this High Holy Day season, we are all asked to use our imaginations and play a little bit of make-believe. According to the 2020 Pew Research Center study of Jewish Americans, 40% of Jewish Americans describe themselves as atheist or agnostic, with their affiliation to Judaism focusing on cultural or ethical ties rather than a belief in God. And that number is even higher among Reform Jews. And yet, all of us are here to immerse ourselves in the narrative that God created the heavens and the earth, to imagine ourselves standing before God in judgment. Are we really being judged by God? Did God really create this world? Is it real? Is it fake? Maybe that binary is not the most helpful way of looking at these ideas. Jennifer Powell, a librarian in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, recently shared on social media, "I have made it my mission to unteach children that fiction is fake. Here are the new definitions I started teaching today. Nonfiction equals learning through information. Fiction equals learning through imagination." So then, the question becomes less about what is real or fake, and more of what can we learn from our imagination, from pretending? How can we be inspired by playing make-believe this year? How can we be moved by imagining that Hayom Harat Olam, this is the day of the world's birth. This day, all creatures stand before you. As a former parent in our Berger Early Learning Center, I loved receiving articles and resources from our center director, Leah Brigham, and our director of Judaic content, Andy Miller. One article was about the benefits of make-believe for our children and noted 3 ways pretend play nurtures a child's development. The article said that first, it helps them to work out confusing and scary life situations. Have you ever witnessed children playing pretend at the doctor's? One child dutifully holds the mock stethoscope as the others line up for their checkup. Inevitably, someone's going to get a shot. This is a child's way of exploring an experience that is common, but sometimes confusing or scary. The second way play helps nourish our children is it helps them to imagine what does not yet exist. Think about the kid who creates the shrinkinator out of blocks. Maybe one day, because of that imagination, that child will become an engineer who actually works on currently non-existent microcomputing technology. And the third way the article says is that it helps them cultivate social intelligence. Pretend play requires communication and social skills. Through pretend play, children learn to read social cues, to take turns, and ultimately to create community. These concepts, though, are not limited just to children. As adults, we too can gain insight from playing make-believe. This has been proven scientifically. Our brains are the most wondrous organs that we are still just beginning to fully understand. Our imaginations can have profound real-world effects on our lives. Have you ever heard of phantom limb syndrome? Some folks, yeah. It's a condition which patients experience sensations, often extremely painful, in a limb that does not actually exist. It's very common in amputees, and is typically a chronic condition, often very resistant to treatment. In one type of phantom limb syndrome, a patient's phantom hand is clenched so tightly that the phantom fingers and the phantom fingernails inflict unbearable pain on the phantom palm. Many of these patients can't escape the pain because their phantom fists are paralyzed in this eye-watering clench. Although the phantom hand is not really there, the pain is very much real. A brilliant researcher, Dr. V.S. Ramachandran, recently discovered a surprisingly low-tech solution. He had his patients put their remaining hand, the non-phantom hand, into a box, tightly clenched, mimicking the position that they felt their phantom hand to be in. Inside the box was a mirror. When the patient looked down, they didn't merely see their actual hand, they saw its reflection as well, which looked just like the phantom hand. Then, by slowly opening the real hand, they could make it look as if their phantom hand was also opening. And sure enough, this deceived the brain into thinking the phantom hand had opened. This relieved the pain. These patients knew they only had one hand. They knew the box contained a mirror. But the illusion, even though they knew it was an illusion, was just what the brain needed to behave appropriately in the real world. We know it's not really the birthday of the world. We know we aren't really standing before God in judgment. And if we imagine, if we pretend, this might be just what our minds need to help us make change in this real world. Pretend play can help us just as it helps our children. It helps us to work out difficult life events. It helps us to imagine a future that does not yet exist. And it helps us to create community. So let's pretend. Hayom Harat Olam. This is the day of the world's birth. This day, all creatures stand before you. Comedian W. Kamau Bell tells the story of his daughter's favorite TV show, Doc McStuffins. It's a favorite in our house as well. For those that aren't familiar, it's an animated show about a 6-year-old girl who's a doctor for her stuffed animals and toys. In the show, Doc's mom, a black woman, is a real doctor who treats people. The show also has some amazing non-animated segments, these interludes with black women who talk about their paths into medicine. One great aspect of the show is that it prepares children for the doctor. It makes them less scared. Through these types of role plays, researchers say children become more comfortable and prepared for life events in a safe way. We actually have Doc's magical stethoscope at our house, and my kids love to play with it. And W. Kamau Bell talks about when it was time for his daughter to go to the doctor for the first time. Not only wasn't she scared, but she was excited. Pretending helps us to prepare for difficult and challenging situations. It helps us work out those confusing, scary issues in our lives. For kids, this might be going to the doctor for the first time. For adults, it may be the existential dread of our own mortality. Hayom Harat Olam. This is the day of the world's birth. This day, all creatures stand before you. We stand before God in judgment. Tomorrow, we will hear the haunting melody of Unatana Tokef, which asks us to consider our lives. Who will live and who will die? Who by fire and who by water? Why read such difficult, scary liturgy? In his commentary on this prayer, Rabbi Ed Feinstein writes, "Who will live and who will die? Who by fire, who by water? I sat in shul for years reading these words before I realized the answer. The answer to each of these questions is me. Who will live and who will die? I will. Who in their time and who before their time? Me. Like every human being, when I die, it will be at the right time, and it will also be too soon. All year long, we might pretend that we are in control, but the holiday skillfully strips us of all that. Unatana Tokef asks us to stop pretending that we are in control and instead to seriously pretend that we might die this year. Our tradition offers us props, like fasting or wearing a kittel, a white shroud, to help us play dead. Morbid, perhaps, but kids do this all the time. They casually pretend, I'm dead. It can be jarring at first to adults, but experts say this is developmentally appropriate. In their play, children inherently understand something that we as adults often miss. We can't ignore the difficult parts of life. By normalizing death, by pretending and really immersing ourselves in the imagery, we can better prepare for the inevitable. When we use play and make-believe to face those situations in life, we then realize what is most important, and God willing, live richer, more fulfilling lives. Doc McStuffins really is one of the best shows on TV. Not just children's shows, but like best show, period. It's groundbreaking because it offers role models of Black women in medicine. Young people, and actually all of us, need images, visions of what does not yet exist in order that we might strive for it. Mae Jennings, the first Black woman to go to space, was inspired by the late Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhuru on Star Trek. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was actually a Trekkie and famously once met Nichelle Nichols. At the time, Nichols was thinking about quitting the show. When King heard this, he told her she absolutely should not. He told her that Star Trek was the only show that he would allow his children to watch. He told her that she was crucial to the civil rights movement. King said, quote, "For the first time on television, we will be seen as we should be seen every day, as intelligent, quality, beautiful people who can sing, dance, and go to space." Comedian W. Kamau Bell notes that after watching Doc McStuffins, his daughter's image of what a doctor looks like was, of course, a Black woman. One day, when he took his daughter to the doctor's office, the doctor walked in and it was a white man. His daughter then said to him, "Dad, that's not a doctor. Doctors are Black women. Frankly, Dad, I'm not even sure if white men are ready to be doctors." Star Trek and Doc McStuffins imagine a better version of this world. During these high holy days, we are presented with that same vision, a better vision of ourselves, a better vision of our city, a better vision of our world. Hayom Harat Olam. This is the day of the world's birth. This day, all creatures stand before you. Imagine a world where we all stand equally and equitably before God by pretending and immersing ourselves in worlds like Doc McStuffin and Star Trek, which are sadly still all too make-believe. We change perceptions and we change realities. We need to see those visions of hope, those visions of the future, to be able to dream and to be able to make those dreams a reality. In a recent interview on the theme of imagination, Jewish parenting expert and author Dr. Wendy Mogul talks about a research study where audience members were monitored with sensors while watching a production of Dreamgirls. She says, what they discovered is relatively shortly, their heartbeats were synchronized. Emil Durkheim coined the term collective effervescence that as a species we are designed to respond to each other's vibrating mirror neurons. And as audience members in a theater, we are experiencing this. Wendy Mogul continues, this is what we've been deprived of for so long during the quarantine, to experience watching a musical and even more performing in a musical. When we imagine together, when we collectively immerse ourselves in the same story, we form community. Children use play to cultivate social intelligence. Put more simply, they use play to create community. And we do the same. Playing make-believe with a classmate or friend teaches kids how to read social cues, recognize and regulate emotions, and negotiate and take turns. The same is true for adults. When we worship together, when we share the same narrative, it can have profound effects on our lives. We are connecting with one another, and it has been so missed. This is what we are doing tonight and throughout these high holy days when we gather in this very sanctuary. We are watching the musical and we are performing in it. We each play a part, and we need our entire congregation to be complete. Hayom Harat Olam. This is the day of the world's birth. This day, all creatures stand before you. There are Jews who believe, and there are Jews who don't believe. But I think most of us are Jews who make believe. Abraham Joshua Heschel famously stressed that we achieve Judaism not through a leap of faith, but through a leap of action. And yet, in these days of awe, we are asked to take a leap of faith, to make believe, to pretend, because pretending can lead to action. It can make us better people, and it can make the world a better place. This High Holy Day season, suspend disbelief and let's play together. Let's make believe that Hayom Harat Olam, this is the day of the world's birth. This day, all creatures stand before you. So happy birthday, world, and happy birthday, Foxy. Shana Tova.